Yes, because 5 is...
But it's only, what, the comma 2? Is that what that is?
Right, you're passing parameters into the function called number format. The first parameter you're passing in is the value that you already have, the number.
Yeah.
And the second parameter is how many decimal points you want to show after. Or how many digits after the decimal points.
Just like in that string replace you did, capital M is what's going in and lowercase m is what's coming out.
It's replacing.
So if he didn't have anything there, it would just say 10 without any...
Right, if I just echo an hour, it's going to echo this long string.
Yeah.
It's helpful when you're dealing with money because you only have two numbers after the decimal point. In money, you never have that. You don't want to have a list. Also, conversely, where you're just showing the full dollar amount for things like $5 exactly, you want to show 5.00. And so number format can be very helpful for that.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out how that, like, because I don't see anything that references decimal to define that that's what you're, that's what you're referring to in terms of
the number format. The number format already
Yeah.
contains. Yeah. If I put a number after that, then it's going to revise the information with that parameter on it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
The average person would never know that to put the two together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike's saying you're not that stupid. It's okay. We're sleeping.
That's all right. I am too. So we talked a lot about this, and I'll send you again a list of here's all the math functions, here's all of the string functions for how you manipulate these. I don't need to walk through them all now. You're not going to remember the specifics anyway. I just want to get you the idea of working with them. But the biggest thing that we haven't really talked about yet is a database and how to connect to that. We talked last week. I think I may have misspoken with the example, but a script is intelligent. It's like a brain that does all these computations, but it can't remember anything by itself. It can remember for the duration of the script what $n/hour is equal to, but as soon as that script stops running, it forgets that. And has no way of remembering that. So you use the database to write down the information and record it. And that's what's really important. Connecting to a database, unfortunately, is complicated in PHP. It requires that you have to define all these parameters and you have to do a series of steps to connect to it. Every PHP environment I've ever worked in has always had this stuff defined for you in a script somewhere. So I'm going to send, after this meeting, I'm going to send you a script that you can use. All you have to do is define up here at the top of the script what the server is that you're connecting to, what your username, what your password, your database, and your email are, and then the script will take care of the rest. And ultimately, this will give you a function down here. It's connecting to the database. It's saying if there is no connection, show an error message and stop running. And then it's getting into this function called query. It's highlighting every queue, so bear with me, but it's giving you this function called query that you're passing in the string that you want to get from the database. So in this case, we want to do a select query. I'll get down into what that means in a second here, but that's getting information out. So we're going to do query, give me everything in the film no database from Visit Florida, and let's print it on the screen. So here I've just pulled that information up. This is the script actually running on a server. It's actually connecting to that database table. It's getting it all out and it's showing it here on the screen. This is what the information looks like. There's only 2 records in here. This is something that was built for Visit Florida a long time ago. So I've jumped over a whole bunch of parts here, but let me walk through them one step at a time here. First we have a custom function that was built up here called query. I'm passing in possibly multiple parameters here. I've talked about how you can define a function. You can define what the parameters are. If you want to have an optional function on the end that may or may not be defined, you simply define it. So n/hour equals 1. Right, in this case, if I pass in a second parameter, it is, say, the number 10 up there, n/hour equals a plus 2. If I'm going to pass in when I refer to this, did I lose my capital S? Down here. Yeah. If I'm going to pass in a value, then it will use that value that I've passed in. If I don't pass in a value, it's going to use whatever is defined up here as the default. So in the case of this function, it's assuming you only have one database for your site and you're always going to be querying that one and you don't need to pass in a special one. And so I'm passing in a blank value for I'm assuming that value doesn't need to be passed, and I'm saying if that's not defined, then use the default value that you've defined at the top of your script. Same thing here. I've set an error email address. If there are errors with the database, send the emails to scott.hardy@mousemedia.com as the default. If for some reason somebody's running this, if Travis, you're going to run this, and you don't want to use mine, you want to pass the errors to travis.rex@mousemedia.com or whatever your home address is. Otherwise, just use the default. If the error is not defined, then use this. It's query email. So that's how you pass in multiple parameters, and that's how they're optional. So now we have that. What this does is it loads within the function. The variables that you've already defined higher up in the script don't exist. You can use global to get them. It goes out and looks in the global set of all of the variables that exist in the script, pull them into the function. Again, this stuff is complicated. That's why I'm giving it.
I was just reading this. This is a comment to what this means.
Yeah.
Got it. I couldn't see from here.
Yes, and the way that it highlights when you're reading script that's on the server is very hard. That's why we don't usually use this program.
Yeah, I was like, what is it? Okay, now I see what it is. So it is giving, it's just a
You can
comment
ignore
of
the
what it is. What
ignore
is
the
it?
blue lines.
Well, that's what I was focusing on.
Right, and then you've defined what the connection is. You're actually running a query to the database. If you're saying if there's no result because you have some kind of mistyped statement in there, it's going to echo a message, sorry, this page is unable to load, and it's going to stop running with this exit function, and it's going to mail off to the error email address. I should say failed query to this table, here's the page that it's on, here's the query that I'm trying to run, and you can go test that yourself. You're saying if it's a select, you're getting information out, you're going to parse that array a little bit, you're going to send information back to the user in the form of an array. Otherwise, if you're trying to push information to the database, like you're inserting it, it's just going to return true, I succeeded. That's all it's going to do. You can read this in more detail later, but ultimately the goal of this is to pull information directly out. I have defaulted this to the Visit Florida meetings. Sorry, just a second. It's blog. Defaulted this to the Visit Florida meetings site. And they have a database in there called blog. So let's select everything from blog, and I'll go through in a second what that select statement means. Rick Estevio created it. He put in some sample information. Stephen bound it as a Florida tested it. He put in some sample information, etc. But it's now going and selecting everything from that. If I want to select from a Visit Florida table instead, I have to put in the second parameter of what the alternate database is that I'm querying. Just as an example from earlier. Or I can query Getaway for Florida if it's St. Augustine or whatever the database is. Same thing if I want to pass in another parameter. Personally, I suggest you send all your emails to Rick Estevio at MouseMedia.
Yeah,
Since he's the one who created the block.
Let's do it. And he went, huh?
No, that's an old joke. We send error emails to whoever was the last person hired in the team.
Oh.
No.
So who are you sending now? Who was the last person?
Lee?
Lee.
I don't know half the people know.
Yeah, it changes constantly. There's two other steps here. One is the actual query statement that you're passing, and I need to go through the syntax of how that works, like select star from what does that mean. But I also have a separate array wrapped around this called print, or a separate function wrapped around this called print a. I call it print up, which I'm probably the only person that pronounces it that way.
Print?
That is not a standard function in PHP. The standard function in PHP is called print r, and it's terrible. This is how print r looks. That's really hard to read. That's the database, and it puts it all on one line. And if you have multiple arrays within that, they get nested in one line, and it's really hard to read. And so there's this very popular unofficial function out there. John Pierpoint found this years ago. It's called print a. You can find this on the web. I'll probably just send this to you after the class today. It's much easier to read. It takes that same array and it echoes it to the screen in much more of a chart format. It's much easier to read.
So, did you have to define that custom function earlier in the script, the print A?
Yep.
Like, do you have to do that every time?
When you're running the script, at the very top here I have a line include print_a.func.php. That's in another file. All that file contains is the function print a. I pass an array into it. It passes back a long string that is all of that stuff echoed line by line by line.